The air inside the 2026 Munich Security Conference Hall was thick with that specific kind of expensive diplomatic silence, the kind that usually precedes a platitude about global cooperation. But when Albert Kolbe took the stage, the atmosphere didn't just shift, it chilled. People weren't leaning in to hear a speech, they were bracing for an impact. Kolbe didn't shout, he didn't pound the lectern or lean into the fire and brimstone rhetoric you'd expect from a man often labeled a hawk. Instead, with a voice as level and dispassionate as a life insurance adjuster, he told the room that the U.S. has no intention of strangling China. For a heartbeat, there was a collective exhale, a sense that maybe, just maybe, we were seeing a soft pivot toward peace. But as he kept speaking, that olive branch began to look remarkably like a barbed wire fence. He wasn't talking about friendship. He was describing a world where the U.S. accepts a powerful China, but only if that power is physically boxed in by a literal wall of missiles and sea mines. When he turned to Taiwan, the room hit a state of clinical shock. He didn't talk about defending democracy or shared values. He spoke about cost-benefit analysis and non-existential risks, weighing the survival of an entire nation against the cold math of a nuclear exchange as if he were balancing a checkbook. It was a blueprint for a cold peace, built on the assumption that the only way to keep the world from burning is to make sure everyone knows exactly where the firewalls are buried. But here's the thing that left the diplomats whispering in the hallways afterward. Kolbe's strategy requires a World War II level of industrial muscle. Yet just a few miles away from that podium, the reality on the ground is a failing grade. We are trying to build a wall of steel while our shipyards are currently struggling to weld a single seam without it cracking. It makes you wonder, is this the ultimate path to global safety, or have we just found a more calculated academic way to live on the very edge of a cliff?
Yeah, it is a really striking image, isn't it? I mean, you have a room full of people discussing the architecture of a whole new world order, right? Drafting these incredibly complex blueprints for containment and denial.
All while totally ignoring the foundation.
Exactly. You can draw whatever wall you want on a map. But if you don't have the bricks and you don't have the mortar and you don't have the masons to actually lay them, that map is, it's just a fantasy.
It feels like this huge disconnect between the software of geopolitics and the actual hardware of reality. Because Kolbe is up there talking about denial and containment, which are, military concepts that require physical mass.
Yeah.
You need ships, you need holes in the water, missile tubes. And he's talking as if we can just order these things online and have them delivered by Tuesday.
And that is exactly the friction point for this whole deep dive today. Because the diplomatic world, they operate in the realm of intent and signaling. Words, yeah. But the industrial world operates on physics, on capacity. And right now, those two worlds aren't just misaligned. They are practically living in different centuries. The strategy Kolbe proposes, this cold peace, relies on the West having the industrial output to match a competitor.
But that competitor has effectively moved on.
China has exited the industrial paradigm the West is still using and entered something completely different. It's highly adaptable, robust, and beautifully efficient.
We're going to get into the actual numbers in a minute, and frankly, the numbers are going to sound completely made up to a lot of people listening.
Absolutely.
But before we do, I just want to press on this idea of the cold peace, because it sounds stable, right? It sounds like the Cold War, which, for all its terrors, didn't actually end in a nuclear holocaust.
Yeah, that's the comfort people take from the phrase.
But you're suggesting that the industrial mismatch makes this particular peace incredibly fragile.
Well, it's fragile because it's based on a bluff. I mean, if you say, I will deny you access to this ocean, it naturally implies you have the fleet to do it. If the other side knows you can't build that fleet, or, and this is crucial, you can't replace that fleet if it takes damage, then your strategy isn't a wall at all.
It's a speed bump.
Just a speed bump. And what we're seeing over there isn't just good manufacturing. It is a reemergence of a globally unified, high-efficiency production paradigm.
Yeah.
It's almost as if they've accessed a tier of industrial reality that the West has completely forgotten that even exists.
You mentioned forgotten, and that actually reminds me of those videos you see of old world architecture, massive stone structures, cathedrals, huge bridges.
Yeah, the ones where people ask how they built that with just a horse and cart.
Exactly. And the answer is usually that they just had a completely different relationship with labor, with material, and with time. So are you saying China has tapped into that kind of what some people call antiquitech energy?
Yes.
Yeah.
We in the West often think of high tech as just microchips and software, right? Lines of code.
Yeah, apps and silicon.
But real civilizational power is the ability to mold the physical world at scale. When you look at their shipbuilding, their energy grid, their physical infrastructure, it really resembles a pre-hard reset era of production.
Pre-hard reset meaning before we offshored everything and forgot how to make things.
Exactly. It's robust, it's massive, and it's incredibly efficient in terms of resource utilization. They aren't just building things, they're building the machine that builds the things, and they're doing it flawlessly.
So let's look at the machine then. I was looking at this data from the Office of Naval Intelligence from 2023. It's becoming known as simply the shipbuilding number.
I remember when that dropped.
Yeah, I remember seeing this circulate on defense networks, and people were literally claiming it had to be a typo.
It's definitely not a typo.
The data states that their shipbuilding capacity is 232 times greater than that of the United States. Not 232%, a multiple of 232.
Let's just sit with that number for a second, 232.
It's actually hard to visualize.
Yes. Imagine you were standing at a harbor in Norfolk, Virginia. You look out, and you see one ship. Let's say it's a destroyer, steel. Now imagine you teleport to a harbor in Shanghai. You look out, and you don't just see a ship. You see a fleet that stretches all the way to the horizon. You see 232 ships for that one American ship. That is the disparity in raw capacity.
But hold on, I have to play the skeptic for you here because that number feels a little too simple. Are we comparing apples to apples? Because gross tonnage is the metric being used, right?
Yes, gross tonnage.
And a container ship is basically just a big empty bathtub made of steel, whereas a U.S. Navy destroyer is this floating supercomputer packed with missiles. So aren't we just counting empty bathtubs against Ferraris?
That is the most common rebuttal, for sure. The whole we build quality, they build quantity argument. And it's true that a very large portion of that capacity is commercial container ships, LNG carriers, bulk freighters.
Right.
But here is why that distinction really doesn't save us. Steel is steel.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning a shipyard that can bend, weld, and assemble a 200,000-ton container ship has the dry docks, the massive cranes, the skilled workforce, and the supply chain to build an amphibious assault ship or an aircraft carrier.
The fundamental skill is just moving and joining metal at scale.
Exactly. So the commercial capacity isn't just a separate thing, it's a foundation. In any kind of conflict or even just a high-tension standoff like this cold peace we're discussing, attrition is what matters.
Right. Taking damage.
If the U.S. loses a ship, we literally do not have the dry docks to repair it quickly or replace it. Our one-ship capacity is completely bottlenecked. But a system with a 232 ships capacity, they can absorb damage, repair things rapidly, and just churn out new hulls.
So it's the difference between a little boutique workshop and a mega gigafactory.
And this leads right into the Ferrari versus F-150 analogy, which I think perfectly captures the philosophical divergence between the two systems.
Okay, let's break that down. The Western model, particularly the American defense industrial base, has basically evolved to produce Ferraris.
Yes. Think about the F-22 Raptor or the Zumwalt-class destroyer.
Right, the Zumwalt.
It's a technological masterpiece. It has that unique tumble-home hull. It's highly stealthy. It has all this advanced automation. It really is the Ferrari of the seas.
But like a Ferrari, it is incredibly expensive, super difficult to maintain, and we only ended up building, what, 3 of them?
3. And you wouldn't use a Ferrari to haul lumber.
No, you'd ruin it.
But industrial competition, and certainly maintaining global logistics, is all about hauling lumber. It's about mass. It's about everyday utility.
So China has taken the Ford F-150 approach.
They are building incredibly robust, standardized, effective platforms at a scale that is frankly awe-inspiring to a Western planner. They aren't trying to make one single ship that can do every imaginable thing perfectly.
They're trying to make 1,000 ships that can do the job well enough.
Right. But isn't the Ferrari better? I mean, if I'm in a naval engagement, I want the best tech. Doesn't superior technology trump mass production every time?
In a short, isolated engagement, maybe. In a long, protracted struggle, not. History is very, very clear on this. Think back to World War II. The Germans built Ferraris, the Tiger tank.
Oh, right. A masterpiece of engineering.
Better armor, better guns, superior optics. But the Americans built the Sherman tank. It was a Ford F-150. It was reliable, it was easy to fix in the field, and we built 50,000 of them.
And the F-150s just swarmed the Ferrari.
Exactly. Quantity has a quality all its own. And the really brilliant thing about the current dynamic is that their F-150s are actually getting very close to Ferrari performance now.
What?
Take their Type 055 destroyers. They aren't junk. They are highly advanced, incredibly capable vessels. So they essentially have the mass of the F-150 combined with the engine of a sports car. It's a phenomenal achievement.
This brings us to the how. how do you actually build and maintain a 232-fold advantage? You can't just do that with government orders alone. There has to be an underlying ecosystem.
Yes, and this is where we get into the civil-military fusion concept.
Right, which is so misunderstood in the West.
Really. In the West, we have what I call the island model. If you look at Newport News shipbuilding or Electric Boat, they are literal islands. They are these highly specialized military facilities that exist almost entirely separate from the rest of the commercial economy.
Because they have to, right? They don't build commercial stuff.
Right. They have to train their own welders from scratch because there is no commercial shipbuilding industry in the U.S. to recruit from anymore. They have to sustain their own entire isolated supply chains.
It's incredibly inefficient.
Because we just don't build commercial ships. I mean,
Yeah.
I honestly can't remember the last time I saw Made in USA on a massive oil tanker.
We let that whole industry die because it wasn't seen as high margin enough for the quarterly spreadsheets.
Exactly. But China, on the other hand, has an ecosystem model. And it is a masterclass in industrial planning. Imagine a massive shipyard in Shanghai. It's basically a city unto itself. In one dry dock, they are building a massive LNG carrier for a European client.
And that creates the profit.
It keeps the lights on. It keeps the steel mills running at full capacity.
And the workers are getting practice every single day.
They are welding every single day. They are solving complex engineering problems. They are constantly optimizing their workflows. Then the Navy comes along and says, we need a new frigate.
They don't have to go build a whole new factory for that?
No.
Yeah.
They just clear in a decent dry dock. They use the exact same massive cranes, the same high-quality steel, the same highly experienced workforce.
So the commercial sector is effectively subsidizing the military expansion, but in a totally organic way.
It's a dual-use organism. The commercial work removes the massive overhead costs for the military work. It allows them to surge production instantly. It's an organic industrial reality where there is literally no wall between civilian and state.
It's all just unified national capacity.
That seems like such a fundamental advantage in efficiency. If we want to build a ship, we have to spin up a dormant, rusty supply chain.
While they just redirect an existing raging river.
And they didn't just build the shipyards either. They integrated the entire chain from top to bottom. They have the world's largest steel mills located right next to the shipyards. They have the world's largest port machinery manufacturers right there.
It is a level of vertical integration that would make Henry Ford weep with envy.
It's the old River Rouge complex concept, but scaled up to a continental level.
I want to dig deeper into the anatomy of this miracle. Because you mentioned they didn't just stumble into this by accident. This was a highly coordinated plan. And it totally contradicts the Western idea that innovation only comes from these spontaneous light bulb moments.
Yeah, we have to look at the structural models of innovation here. The West is completely addicted to the linear model.
Science leads to invention. Invention leads to product.
Right. We are obsessed with the eureka moment, the Nobel Prize breakthrough, the brand new molecule, or the disruptive algorithm.
We want the magic trick.
We want to skip the hard work. But China follows a circular model, and it is so much more effective for mass production. It starts with import or adoption. They look at what already works in the world, and they bring it in.
Some critics in the West call that copying.
You can call it copying if you want to be dismissive, or you can recognize it as rapid, highly efficient knowledge acquisition. But that's just step one anyway. The real magic is step two. Scale.
Scaling it up.
They take that technology and they throw it into the largest domestic market in human history, 1.3 billion people.
And when you scale something that massively, strange things happen to the economics, don't they?
Marginal costs drop to near zero. If you are building one solar panel, it's incredibly expensive. If you are building 1 billion of them, the cost of the next one is basically just the raw material.
And that massive profitability from the scale creates a feedback loop.
Exactly. It funds the R&D to make the next batch incrementally better. So they adopt, they scale, and then they improve.
And that improvement is just relentless.
It's not about waiting for one big leap. It's about taking 10,000 tiny steps at sprinting speed. It's the Asian tiger model on steroids. Japan did this, Korea did this. But China is doing it with a population size that allows for a level of specialization we can't even dream of.
Let's talk about the 10 S's that are often cited in these industrial breakdowns. We touched on scale, but subsidies and strategy seem to be the really heavy hitters here. I mean, the numbers are staggering.
RMB 431 billion in entry subsidies between 2006 and 2013 alone.
That is a colossal amount of capital injection. And we really have to understand what entry subsidies mean in this context. The government literally paid companies to start building ships. They said, if you build a shipyard, we will give you the money to do it.
Even if they had no prior experience, even if they had no guaranteed customers yet.
Yes, because the goal wasn't immediate quarterly profit. The goal was to create raw capacity, and then you layer on another RMB, 156 billion in production subsidies. This is the essence of national power capitalism.
That's a term that definitely needs unpacking, capitalism. Because in the West, we practice what you'd call consumer welfare capitalism, right?
Correct. In the US or the UK, the government and the market ask, does this make flat-screen TVs cheaper for the average guy? Or does this generate the highest possible return for the shareholder this quarter?
Right.
If building massive ships is hard and low margin, the efficient market hypothesis tells us to just stop doing it. Buy the ships from Korea. Use that freed up capital to build software companies or trade derivatives.
Which, to be fair, makes sense on a spreadsheet.
If you assume the world is forever safe, perfectly stable, and everyone will always follow free trade rules. But China operates on national power capitalism. Their core metric isn't profit. It is sovereignty.
Sovereignty.
They ask, does this industry make the nation more powerful? Does it make us independent and resilient? If the answer is yes, they genuinely do not care if it loses money on paper for 20 years.
So they are willing to burn cash to buy a strategic outcome.
They are buying technical sovereignty. They are buying the ability to say no to the rest of the world. And that willingness to be economically inefficient in the short term is exactly what allows them to be strategically dominant in the long term.
Let's look at the actual result of that spending, that 2006 to 2013 explosion. The data says they were seeing 30-plus new shipyards entering the market every single year.
It was an absolute gold rush. Imagine a new Detroit popping up every single year, but dedicated entirely to massive ships.
But then 2008 happened, the global financial crisis. Global trade just collapsed. Shipping rates hit the floor. By all conventional economic rights, this massive bubble should have burst. All these new, heavily subsidized shipyards should have gone belly up.
In a purely free market, they absolutely would have. It would have been an industrial bloodbath.
Yeah.
But this is where the state played an absolute masterstroke. They didn't just blindly bail everyone out. They didn't just throw good money after bad to keep zombie companies alive.
They used the crisis.
They used the crisis to aggressively prune the garden.
Which leads us to the whitelist.
In 2013, their Ministry of Industry and Information Technology released a list of shipyards that met very specific high-level standards and conditions. If you were on the whitelist, you got the credit lines, you got the state contracts, you got the export guarantees.
And if you weren't on the list,
you were left to the wolves.
Mm-hmm.
They effectively cut off the life support for the inefficient, the smaller, the lower tech yards. They just let them die.
That's pretty brutal.
It's evolutionary. They use state power to accelerate natural selection within their own industry.
Yeah.
They forced consolidation.
Right.
And the result was that the survivors, these new national champions, absorbed all the best assets, the skilled workers, and the market share of the failures. They emerged from the global crisis leaner, bigger, and vastly more technologically advanced.
So while the West was spending years debating austerity and banking regulations, China was actively curating its industrial base to become world-class.
And it worked flawlessly. They overtook Japan and Korea to become the undisputed largest shipbuilder by tonnage. And yes, a lot of this growth was technically business stealing. The data notes that 70% of their expansion came from taking contracts that would have otherwise gone to rival nations.
Which sounds nefarious when you phrase it as business stealing.
Only if you're the one losing the business.
Mm.
But flip it around. If you are a strategist there, you don't see it as stealing at all. You see it as reclaiming the fundamental means of production.
Reclaiming technical sovereignty.
Exactly. By dominating the physical ships, you ensure that no one can ever blockade you. You ensure that your goods will always reach the world. And those massive subsidies we talked about, they actually lowered global freight rates by about 6%.
Wait, so they effectively made shipping cheaper for everyone else, too?
They subsidized the entire global economy just to get their goods out there faster and further. That boost in trade volume, which is estimated at something like $144 billion annually, more than paid for the initial subsidies.
So it was a highly calculated investment with a massive return on investment, not just in money, but in global influence.
It expands the reach of their entire civilization.
It's a beautifully unified, high-efficiency production paradigm. And the crazy thing is, It's not just ships. I want to pivot back to this antiquitech idea again, because the more I read about their broader infrastructure, the more it feels like they are building a completely different type of civilization.
Right. Yeah. We have to look at energy, for instance. You can't run a massive continental industrial base on windmills and good intentions. You need serious baseload power.
Nuclear power.
Yes. China is building more nuclear plants right now than the rest of the world combined.
Yeah.
And they aren't just stamping out the old pressurized water reactors we used to build back in the 70s. They are actively deploying fourth-generation technology.
High-temperature, gas-cooled reactors.
Exactly.
Walk us through the difference there. Why does that specific tech matter so much?
Because these reactors are meltdown-proof by the laws of physics, not just relying on complex, human-designed safety systems. And they can run at much higher temperatures.
Which is good for what?
Industrial heat. You can use that heat directly for massive hydrogen production or large-scale water desalination. They're treating nuclear power not as some scary last resort that requires endless public hearings, but as the beating heart of an industrial giant.
And then there's the battery tech, sodium batteries.
The West is completely obsessed with lithium for EVs and storage.
Right.
But lithium is scarce, it's expensive, and the global supply chain is incredibly fragile. China is already commercializing sodium-ion batteries.
Sodium, like literally salt.
Literally salt. It is everywhere. It's incredibly cheap. It's abundant. Now, sodium batteries aren't quite as energy dense as lithium, so you might not put them in a high-end sports car.
But for a grid.
Exactly. For grid storage, for powering homes, for low-speed utility vehicles, they are an absolute game changer. And China is already powering thousands of homes with them right now. They're just bypassing the resource bottleneck entirely.
They also have that ultra-tough, stretchable steel and the recyclable wind turbine blades. They're just pushing material science so fast. But this brings me to a detail in the notes that I honestly thought was a joke the first time I read it.
Yes.
High-rise pig farming.
Yes, the pig towers.
Please, you have to walk me through this, because when I read that, I'm picturing a sleek skyscraper, but instead of investment bankers in suits, it's just pigs.
That is quite literally what it is.
Yeah.
In Ezu, there is a 26-story concrete structure. From the outside, it looks like a massive modern apartment block or maybe a tech office. But inside, it is a fully automated, biosecure facility capable of producing 1.2 million pigs a year.
26 stories of pigs. How does that even physically work? Do they take the elevator?
They actually do. They use these massive industrial freight elevators to move them. But the true genius of it is in the system design. It's a completely closed loop.
Hey, cow.
The pigs are housed on the upper floors.
Yeah.
The waste, which, by the way, is a massive pollution problem in traditional flat farming, is gravity-fed downwards. It goes directly into these massive anaerobic digesters at the base.
To make biogas.
Yes. The pig waste generates the electricity needed to run the entire building, heat the water, and power the massive ventilation systems. It's an almost perfect circle of energy and matter.
You know, it sounds almost dystopian to a Western ear. It sounds like something straight out of the Matrix, but for livestock.
Sure. To a Western sensibility that romanticizes the idea of the family farm and the little red barn, yes, it feels alien. But you have to look at it through the lens of pure efficiency.
Right.
It uses a fraction of the land. It completely eliminates agricultural runoff into rivers. It perfectly controls disease because all the air is filtered. It is rigorous industrial logic applied directly to biology.
It's that antiquitech efficiency we were talking about. It feels like an old world mastery of the physical realm, but highly modernized. They say, we need protein. Fine, we will build an optimal machine that manufactures protein.
Exactly. And they're doing the exact same thing with staffless hotels and fully autonomous ports.
Oh, the ports are amazing.
We in the West often see these things as quirky novelties or future tech concepts. They see them as necessary, immediate evolutions to deal with labor dynamics and to maximize raw output. They are aggressively automating the physical world while we are busy automating our emails.
Which connects right back to the hard reset. The idea that the West went through this hard reset of de-industrialization. We offshored everything to save a few bucks. And in doing so, we didn't just lose the physical factories, we lost the recipe.
That's the real tragedy of it. We think manufacturing is just following a set of written instructions. Yeah. Insert tab A into slot B.
Anyone can do it.
Right? But real manufacturing, high-end, scalable industrial output relies heavily on tacit knowledge.
Tacit knowledge, meaning the unwritten stuff.
Yes. It's the intuitive feel a master welder has for exactly how a specific grade of steel expands in the heat. It's the foreman on the floor, knowing exactly which machine is temperamental on a humid day. You can't put that in a manual.
And when you fire all the welders and you close down the shipyard, that knowledge just evaporates.
It's gone. You can't just buy it back with a sudden government grant 20 years later. You have to organically relearn it over generations.
But China never stopped learning.
Never. They kept the factories running, they kept the workforce employed and welding, and then crucially, they layered the new tech right on top of that deep foundation of tacit knowledge.
So they have the old world grunt, the steel, the concrete, the sweat, combined with the new world brain, the AI, the robotics, the 5G networks.
They're currently installing more industrial robots than the rest of the world combined. So that old narrative that China is just cheap labor, that is 20 years out of date. They're the high-tech manufacturers now.
Yeah.
In their system, manufacturing is the high-tech.
I love that quote from the notes. A fire-breathing dragon on government-provided steroids.
It implies a scale of physical power that is qualitatively different from anything we are used to dealing with in modern diplomacy.
So we return to the edge of the cliff. We return to Elbridge Colby in Munich and his strategy of denial. If China has this World War II level of muscle, this proven ability to churn out ships, missiles, and drones like sausages, what does that actually mean for the cold peace?
It means the balance of power has fundamentally, physically shifted. The U.S. strategy of denial relies entirely on a wall of steel. But as we've established, you need to be able to build the wall.
And currently, we are trying to build that wall with a boutique system designed for Ferraris.
While the other side is 3D printing F-150s by the thousands. And remember, in a real conflict, those commercial ships, the thousands of merchant marines they build every year, they instantly become the logistics backbone.
Right, they are dual use, they are the supply lines, they're the troop transports.
You can put a modular missile container on a commercial cargo ship in a matter of hours.
And if you have 232 times the capacity to move heavy things across the ocean, you completely dictate the tempo of the conflict. You can swarm the zone. You can replenish your losses instantly. You can just outlast the opponent.
And this brings up the idea of sovereignty again. Their dual circulation strategy. This is their master plan to make sure they never actually need us.
It's their economic immune system.
Exactly. They saw what happened to Russia with the SWIFT system. They saw the devastating sanctions, and they said, never us. By building this complete, vertically integrated industrial ecosystem, literally from the lithium mine to the battery factory to the finished ship, they have completely inoculated themselves against Western economic coercion.
And because they can innovate without asking for permission.
That is the key. If they want to build a Hyperloop or a city-sized factory or a 26-story pig tower, they don't spend 10 years in environmental review boards.
They don't have local zoning lawsuits holding up progress for a decade.
They just start digging. This speed, this total lack of bureaucratic friction is a massive strategic asset. It allows them to adapt physically faster than any decentralized democracy can.
It's deeply intimidating, but honestly, it's also incredibly impressive. You just have to respect the sheer unified engineering competence of it all.
It's a stark reminder that human civilization is ultimately built on the physical world. We can trade derivatives and argue about policy on the internet all day long, but at the end of the day, true power belongs to the people who can pour the concrete, weld the steel, and launch the ships.
So Colby's speech at Munich, that silence in the room wasn't just about the harshness of his diplomatic words.
No.
It was the silence of a room collectively realizing they might have brought a knife to a gunfight.
Or a fancy fountain pen to a bulldozer fight.
Right. We are living on the edge of a cliff because one side has the actual industrial capacity to build a bridge across it, and the other side has completely forgotten how to mix the cement.
And that is the cold, hard reality of the cold peace. It's not about who has the better diplomatic slogans. It's about who has the better shipyards.
We in the West often look for secret weapons. We always want to find the one magic gadget that saves us, the laser defense system, the hypersonic missile.
But the ultimate secret weapon is just the ability to weld a seam without it cracking.
Multiplied by a factor of 232.
Exactly.
It just reframes the entire global game. Their rise isn't just a neat GDP growth number on a chart. It's the restoration of a unified, high-output industrial philosophy. They view their entire nation as a single, perfectly optimized factory floor.
And if the future belongs to those who can actually build it, physically, ton by heavy ton, then we really need to stop obsessing over stock market tickers and start counting the cranes.
The cold peace isn't kept by diplomats in expensive suits. It's kept by the people who can float the most steel. And right now, the map tells us exactly where that steel is being poured.